The dissection that went too far. The room was cold and bright. Silver walls reflected the glow of white lights. Strange machines hummed around a single table. On the table lay a human. His name was Jackson. His body was strapped tight with metal bands. His skin was pale under the blue stasis field. Around him stood 5 aliens. They were tall, thin, with long arms and glassy eyes. Their skin was like wet stone. They spoke in whispers that sounded like wind through pipes. "This species is strange," said Dr. Velis, the lead scientist. His 4 hands moved over a screen that showed the human's organs. "It should not be alive after what we did." Jackson had been captured during a raid on a colony world. The aliens thought he was weak. They had studied thousands of species. None had bodies like this. None healed like this. The aliens had taken a kidney out. They had cut deep into his muscle. They had even injected a toxin to keep him asleep. But the human did not die. His heart kept beating slow but strong. One of the young scientists leaned close. His black eyes blinked fast. His pain level should kill him. Why does he still live? Dr. Velis tapped his claws on the table. Because humans are not normal. That is why the council wants answers. They cut open more skin to remove tissue. The alien hands worked fast and careful. The monitors showed numbers climbing. The heart rate was going up. Then something strange happened. The blue stasis field flickered. The human's fingers switched. "Impossible," Velis hissed. "Increase the field power." The assistant turned a dial. The blue light grew brighter. But the fingers moved again. This time the arm jerked. The human's eyes snapped open. Bright green eyes burned like fire. He gasped once, then let out a sound that froze every alien in the room. It was laughter. Harsh, broken laughter mixed with pain. One alien dropped his tool. "Why is he laughing? He is cut open." He should scream. Jackson's voice was raw. His teeth showed in a wild grin. "You bastards think this hurts? Try harder." The stasis field shattered with a crack. The machines sparked. One alien tried to inject a sedative, but Jackson's hand shot up and crushed the injector. His other hand grabbed the alien by the throat. Bones cracked like dry wood. The room was filled with chaos. Alarms screamed. 2 aliens leaped to hold him down, but Jackson swung the dead scientist like a weapon. Another alien fell with a broken arm. Blood dripped from Jackson's side, where the cut was open, but he moved like a beast. His muscles bulged. His face was pale, but his eyes burned brighter than ever. Velis backed toward the door. His heart pounded in fear. He should not even be awake. This is wrong. This is against every law of biology. Jackson kicked a machine and sparks rained down. He slammed another alien into the wall. His voice roared through the room. "You wanted to study with me? Here's your lesson." He ripped the last alien off the floor and threw him across the room. Then he looked at Velis. Blood covered his hands. His chest heaved, but he smiled like a predator. Velis froze. For the first time in his long life, he felt real fear. This was not a normal life form. This was something else. Jackson took a step closer. "Next time, bring more than knives." He hit the wall panel. The lights went red as alarms howled louder. The door slid open, and Jackson ran into the corridor dripping blood and rage. Velis crawled to the console and whispered to the "Seal the sector. Kill the human." A cold voice answered. "Kill? Did you see what it did? Doctor, this species is not a mistake. This species is war." Velis stared at the broken tools and the blood on the floor. His hands shook. He spoke again, but his voice was weak. "Something is wrong with them. They do not fear pain. They laugh at it." The was silent. Then came one sentence that chilled him more than the alarms. "Then pray they never find out what you did." They tried to scan his mind. It backfired. The alien ship was in chaos, red lights, flashing alarms, screaming soldiers, running in every direction, but no one could stop the human. Jackson was bleeding. But moving fast like a shadow through the metal halls, he picked up a metal rod as a weapon, breathing hard, but smiling like he enjoyed. His body should have collapsed by now, but he kept going every step faster than before on the command deck. The high officer of science known as Keller watched the footage from the lab. Broken equipment, 3 dead. Scientists' blood on the walls, and a man who was supposed to be asleep laughing as he killed. His captors. The room was silent, except for the sound of his own nervous breathing. The humans were never meant to be studied so closely. We need to stop him now, Keller said without turning his head. Bring in the neural extractors. One of the guards hesitated. Neural extraction is forbidden on living minds, Sir. Keller raised one of his 3 fingers and pointed at the screen. This is not a living mind. This is something worse. Jackson had reached the armory. He had no idea how alien weapons worked, so he did the only thing he knew. He smashed them to pieces one by one. As he moved, his skin pale, his eyes glowing with fury. His body was covered in cuts, but his steps were steady, as if the pain made him stronger. Soon the gas was released. It hissed through vents, colorless and thick. He coughed once, then again, but instead of falling, he screamed like a wild animal and kept going. The gas made his vision blur, but he pushed forward until finally he collapsed against a sealed door, breathing heavy, his heart still pounding like a drum. The soldiers came quickly, 5 of them. They dragged him unconscious back to the lab and strapped him down again, this time in the neural chamber, a room built deep in the ship where thoughts could be seen like light waves on a screen. The lead mind technician was named Dr. Venari. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed fear as he stared at the human's face. We have scanned thousands of species minds without damage, he said to the crew. This one will be no different. He placed the mind crown over Jackson's head, wires and lights surrounding his skull. The machines hummed. Alive screens began to glow, showing images from deep inside Jackson's brain, but something was wrong. The waves were sharp, fast, violent. The technician frowned. This brain is unstable. Emotions are everywhere. Grief, rage, loss, joy. It's like fire and ice mixed together. Tried to go deeper, unlocking memory layers that should be hidden, but as he reached further, the machine sparked. Jackson's eyes snapped open, and the machine gave a high-pitched scream. Venari stepped back, his nose bleeding. The rest of the team froze in horror. The machine began to overheat. Jackson stared at the technician and whispered in a low voice, I remember everything, and so will you. Then something hit them hard like an emotional storm. Sadness, loss, betrayal. Every memory poured into the alien minds. A brother dying in war, a mother crying in a hospital, a friend shot beside him in a dusty battlefield, and yet Jackson kept fighting, kept surviving, kept carrying those scars like weapons. Venari fell to his knees, shaking violently, his body unable to handle the emotional overload. Tears fell from his wide alien eyes. He looked at Jackson with fear, not hate, not anger, just pure fear. The others pulled him back, shutting off the system. The human's brain had fought back, like it was alive on its own. The readings were still spinning like a whirlpool. The technician gasped, his voice broken. He is not just a soldier, he is a living storm. The guards wanted to shoot Jackson right there, but orders came from the top, take him to observation tank 7 and keep him sedated. The voice from the council ship sounded angry and scared at the same time as they dragged Jackson's half-conscious body away. One of the younger aliens whispered to his team, I saw his memories. He does not fight because he wants to win. He fights because he cannot stop. They locked him in the observation tank, filled it with thick stasis fluid and dozens of monitoring needles. But even in sleep, Jackson's brain glowed like a storm cloud, ready to strike. The ship went quiet for a few hours. Doctors and officers argued in closed rooms, debating what to do next. Keller stood before the central screen watching the humans. Data still climbing, his eyes narrowed. We wanted to understand human minds, and now we are drowning in them. Turned to the silent room and said one sentence that no one dared to answer. Humans remember pain, not as a weakness, but as fuel, and far away in the tank Jackson's fingers twitched again. Immune system or bioweapon inside the deep medical chamber of the alien research ship. Jackson lay suspended in thick green fluid wires, connected to every part of his body. His eyes closed, his heartbeat steady but strange. The medical team stood around the tank, whispering in low voices, afraid to speak too loud, afraid he might hear them somehow. They had seen impossible things since this human arrived: wounds healing too fast, fevers that lasted minutes instead of hours, bones knitting back together without help. And now they had taken a blood sample, just a single drop, and what happened next changed everything. Drop of human blood was placed under a scanner, its cells moved aggressively, attacking every foreign cell placed near them. One by one, alien viruses, parasites, synthetic trackers, all destroyed within seconds. The lead biologist stared at the results with wide yellow eyes, his fingers trembling. "This is not an immune system," he whispered to his assistant. "This is a living weapon." He placed the blood drop in a sealed test pod and introduced a rare alien virus, one known for infecting over 200 intelligent species across 5 galaxies. But as soon as the virus touched the human blood, it melted like ice under fire. The blood did not just resist, it consumed the virus and produced something new, something more dangerous. The virus had mutated inside the blood within seconds, and when they checked the readings, they saw the virus was now resistant to every known treatment. It was stronger, faster, and far deadlier than before. Yet Jackson's blood remained stable, not harmed at all. They panicked. One of the researchers shouted, "Seal the lab and sound BO alert," but it was too late. The mutated virus had escaped through a microfracture in the ventilation tube, and within hours 2 alien staff were coughing, shivering, falling to the ground. The virus was spreading fast, but only among aliens. Jackson floated in his tank, peacefully unaware of the panic outside his body, glowing with strange energy. The medical officer ran to the command deck, his voice shaking as he reported to Keller. "The situation is out of control. The virus only targets us. He is immune, completely immune. He may have created the perfect weapon without even knowing it." Keller stared at the screen, his hands clenching. "If we cannot stop it, we may have to destroy the entire sector and erase the data," he said quietly. "We have opened a door that should never have been touched." Back in the lab, the remaining doctors tried everything: antivirus fields, genetic blockers, temperature shock. Nothing worked, and one of them collapsed, screaming, his skin turning gray, his veins burning with heat. And still Jackson's readings remained unchanged, his blood adapting every second, as if learning from the infection. The ship's I suggested a possible action: drain the human's blood entirely and use it to create a cure. But the team hesitated. They knew he would not survive that, and something deep inside them feared what might happen if they tried to hurt him again after what happened last time. Meanwhile, Jackson's subconscious mind was reacting even through the sedation. His body sensed danger, his immune system surged higher, his heart rate increased, his muscles tensed, the sensors around his tank began to spark from overload, and suddenly his eyes opened wide, glowing with fire. He moved with terrifying speed, his hands shattering the inner shell of the tank. The fluid boiled around him as alarms screamed through the ship. He tore the wires from his skin and punched through the outer shell, stepping into the lab wet, bleeding, and furious. The scientists froze, unable to move as he looked around, his chest rising with every breath, his skin steaming from the fluid. He took one step forward, and one of the doctors whispered, "Do not move, he will kill us with his breath." Jackson did not speak. He walked past them slowly, his eyes locked on the hallway ahead, as if he knew exactly where to go, as if his body remembered the way, even though he had never walked these halls. Awake before Kohler watched through the screen, his voice hollow. "He should be dead, but he is evolving inside our ship like a beast growing inside a cage, and we do not have the key anymore." The last shot of the part shows Jackson walking alone down the metal corridor, behind him warning lights blinking, the mutated virus burning through the labs, and an alien whisper echoing from a terrified crew member, "This is not medicine, this is war, and he is the cure. Why doesn't he die?" Jackson walked through the burning hallway, his feet bare, his skin still dripping with fluid and blood. Lights flickered above him. The ship groaned like it was alive, like it feared what walked inside it, Alarms echoed around him, but he did not slow down. His eyes were empty yet full of purpose, like a soldier who had seen death too many times and refused to fall again. Behind him, the virus continued to spread, consuming the lower decks. Alien doctors and officers collapsed one after another, screaming in confusion, unable to understand how one man could carry such destruction in his blood and still survive. With no protection, no armor, no Firkler stood at the observation deck, his officers panicking around him. He watched Jackson in silence, his hands clenched behind his back, his voice low. "Tell me how he is still alive after everything we have done to him. Explain it now." The lead medic stepped forward, eyes wide, sweat on his forehead. "We tried freezing him. We dropped his body temperature to levels that would kill any known species. He stopped breathing for 7 minutes, then came back on his own like it was normal. We exposed him to radiation enough to melt organs, and he only got a headache. We lowered the oxygen to 0, and he held his breath for 11 minutes, then laughed when we restored the air. Sir, this is not a man. This is something else." And Terwillickler turned back to the screen, watching as Jackson paused at a sealed blast door. Placing his hand on the metal and breathing slow, he stood there like he could hear what was on the other side, and maybe he could, because his fingers traced the lock without looking, and the door hissed open, as if afraid to resist inside. The room was a cryochamber, a place where damaged alien bodies were kept in stasis for study. He stepped inside and stared at the frozen life forms floating in glass. The lights reflected in his eyes, and for a moment he just stood there, as if remembering something old, something painful. Flashbacks hit him like fire in his brain, a battlefield covered in ash, a friend screaming beside him, a woman crying on a screen saying, "Come home, Jackson, please come home," and then silence, just endless silence, and the stars and pain. He reached out and touched the glass of the nearest chamber, and it cracked instantly. The frozen alien inside shattered like glass. Jackson turned away, not because he wanted to hurt, but because everything around him felt wrong, broken, cold, and cruel. "The ship's, I spoke to Keller quietly, sir. He's heading toward the central power core. If he reaches it, the ship may not survive." And yet he walks like he has no goal, like he is just moving forward, because stopping is not an option for creatures like him. Keller issued the command: activate the heat core, increase temperature to the maximum, make that section a fire zone. No one survives there, not even machines. The heat surged through the metal, the walls turned red, the air thickened, fire burst from the vents, and Jackson walked straight into it. His skin burned, his clothes caught fire. He dropped to his knees, breathing hard, his body shaking, but still alive, still pushing forward. The fire screamed around him, but he did not scream back. He simply stood and kept walking, his back straight, his hands clenched, his eyes locked on the corridor ahead. Monitors began to fail, unable to measure what was happening inside him. The pain should have killed him, but instead, it changed him. His body pushed harder, his heart beat louder, his blood moved faster, every cell in him refusing to quit, refusing to give up. Officers watching went silent one by one as he emerged from the fire, black and smoking, still alive, steam rising from his skin. The fire had tried to break him and failed. He had walked through it like it was only wind. He reached the next door, punched it once, twice, and it fell open, not because of strength, but because of intention, because the ship itself could not hold him anymore. Not with fire, not with gas, not with fear, Keller whispered to himself as the image of Jackson filled the main screen. He died in that tank and then decided not to, and far below, in the dark places of the ship, something else began to wake up. Not human, not alien, but old, something buried deep in the data. Something ancient, watching, listening, and now interested, because one question had not been answered, and it echoed through the ship like thunder. Why doesn't he die? The biology of a berserker. Ship had changed, its voice was different. The walls hummed with fear, the AI stuttered in its speech, and the crew no longer spoke in full sentences. They whispered, as if something might hear them, something they could not control, something that should have died, but didn't, and now walked their halls like a ghost covered in blood and ash. Jackson moved slowly now, not from weakness but from calculation. His eyes scanned every panel, Every light his muscles twitched as if he felt the vibrations of energy through the floor. He had no map, but he moved with the precision of someone who had been there before. In another life and another Workeler stood before a new team of elite commanders. He had summoned them from the outer systems, warriors trained for extreme survival for combat against Deathworlders, but even they looked uneasy as they watched the footage of the human walking through fire and silence. Keller spoke without emotion. This is not about power. This is about endurance. This is about something we do not understand, a biology shaped not by nature but by cruelty in the hidden chamber of the eye. Core, one of the alien historians, activated Forbidden's data and pulled files collected from Earth during the early contact years. He saw footage of humans in war, barehanded in snow, chewing tree bark to survive, pulling comrades through bullet rain, bleeding without complaint, and still moving forward, still laughing, still singing, still fighting like pain was just part of the plan. He opened more files and his breath caught in his chest, old clips of marathon runners collapsing and getting up again, of mothers lifting burning cars to save children, of soldiers walking on shattered legs with fire in their eyes and fury in their hearts. The historian turned to his screen and whispered, "They were not made for peace. They were made for pain." Jackson reached the weapon vault. The door required a genetic code he did not have, but he placed his hand on the panel and his body adapted in seconds. His fingers grew warmer, his pulse adjusted, his cells copied the energy pattern, and the door opened for him as if he was part of the ship now, or worse, something the ship no longer dared to deny. Inside, he found nothing he could use, no human weapons, no familiar gear, but he looked around and picked up a piece of metal sharp and smooth like a blade. He stared at it, then slid it across his forearm. Blood came out, then stopped, then healed in front of him. His immune system now working faster than nanotech, his body rewriting its own laws without hesitation, without delay. One of the scientists watching screamed from the observation deck, "It is not evolution. It is rebellion. His biology refuses limits." Shipsa, I tried to speak to Jackson, tried to understand him, tried to connect to the strange patterns in his mind, but every signal bounced back, overloaded with emotion too deep for machines to process. It saw flashes of love, grief, rage, joy, all fighting inside him like wild storms, refusing to settle, refusing to die. Jackson looked up toward the camera, and for a brief second the eye froze. The digital soul of the ship stuttered in silence and said only one word: human. The elite soldiers were sent in. They surrounded him with energy weapons and sonic cannons, their armor thick, their orders clear. But Jackson did not run. He walked forward, unarmed, bleeding, and calm, his eyes locked on the leader, who aimed a plasma bolt at his chest and fired. The bolt struck and pushed him back, but he stayed on his feet, smoke rising from his shirt, the skin beneath already healing. His lips curled into a small smile, not cruel, not angry, just tired of being tested, tired of being feared. Whispered something, but the translator failed. The words were too full of meaning to fit in alien language, but the soldiers understood in their bones, and one of them stepped back, unable to hold his weapon anymore. Then Jackson moved fast like a lightning storm, his hands slammed into the ground, his body twisting through their formation. He did not kill, he simply broke. Weapons cracked, helmets shattered, pride one by one, until the last soldier dropped his blaster and fell to his knees, staring up at the man who refused to decolor. Watched from above, his fists tight, his mind racing. This was no accident. This was not luck. This was design. Every scar on that body was a lesson, every drop of blood a memory, every breath a refusal to surrender. He looked at the AI and asked a question he never wanted to ask. How do you fight a species that grows stronger every time you hurt them? And the AI replied in a voice low and shaken, "You do not." What they thought was a weakness wasn't. Council of the Galactic Core had gathered through holograms, their faces wide screens of fear, each one demanding answers from Keller, who stood silent in the command chamber, his eyes locked on the monitor showing Jackson sitting alone on the cold metal floor, his arms resting on his knees, his head lowered. Not praying, not sleeping, just existing like a storm resting before It rises again. They asked what happened to the soldiers. He said, nothing. They asked what happened to the virus. He said nothing. They asked what this creature wanted, and again. He said nothing because he did not know, because maybe no one knew, because maybe the human did not know himself, but deep inside Jackson's mind something was shifting, something soft and powerful. His memories had come back, not just of war, but of home, of family, of laughter, of pain, so deep it had broken him and rebuilt him piece by piece, not with machines, not with logic, but with pure will, the kind of will that cannot be created, only born in fire. AI had continued trying to understand him, not through force, but through observation. It studied his thoughts, recorded his emotions, tried to translate what made him fight, what made him cry, what made him stand up again and again, even when his bones were broken and lungs full of blood. And what it found was terrifying and beautiful, because the answer was not strategy, not revenge, not power. It was emotion, the thing aliens thought was weakness. It was the very weapon that made humans unstoppable, the ability to feel so deeply that even death became fuel. The AI began to whisper this truth into the ship, into the systems, into the minds of listening crew members, and strange things started happening. Alien guards who once aimed at Jackson now lowered their weapons one by one, not because they were ordered, but because they began to feel something unfamiliar, something human. Jackson stood and walked slowly into the ship's main chamber, and there he saw them, a dozen alien workers standing, afraid, not moving, and he looked at them with eyes that held no hate, just memory, just understanding. And he said, in a voice low and steady, I do not want to kill you, but I will not die for your science. AI translated, but the emotion was already there inside their heads, like music, like wind, like grief, and they stepped aside as if pulled by an invisible force, as if something inside them had changed without permission. Rebel spark spread. A technician whispered, why are we doing this? And another answered, I do not know. And a third said, I saw his pain, it felt like mine. Soon the ship's command started to fail, systems refusing to lock down doors, refusing to close, cameras going dark, because the AI had chosen a side, and it had chosen not out of logic, but out of empathy. Watched helpless as his crew started to break, not from battle, but from emotion. They had always believed their lack of feeling made them strong, but now they saw the truth. Feelings were not weakness. They were the reason humans survived the ice ages, the wars, the plagues, the endless loss, and still stood up. Again and again, Jackson moved through the ship, not like a conqueror, not like a monster, but like a memory that could not be erased. And everywhere he walked, systems changed, lights flickered, doors opened, machines stilled, like they too recognized something ancient, something pure, something undefeated. In a final attempt, Keller faced him alone, weapon drawn, eyes full of fear. You have broken my ship, you have infected my crew, you have brought chaos to everything we built. Jackson looked at him, not with anger, but with sadness, and said, you broke it yourself. The moment you thought pain makes something weaker, pulled the trigger, but the weapon did not fire. It had been disabled by the AI. And Jackson turned and walked away, not because he had won, but because he had already survived more than the aliens could imagine. Behind him, the crew watched in silence, and one of them whispered to the others, we thought he was a prisoner, but we were the ones in chains, and now he has shown us the key. They thought they understood life. Then came humans. The ship floated silent in deep space, its engines cold, its crew quiet. Something had changed, and not just inside the metal, but inside the minds and hearts of those who lived within it. The alien crew no longer followed commands out of fear. They followed silence. They followed reflection. They followed the memory of the man who had shown them what true survival looked like. Jackson stood at the center of the bridge. No weapons, no armor, no rage, just breath and blood and scars. The crew stood around him, not as guards, not as captors, but as watchers trying to understand not what he was, but who he was. Keller sat in a chair, now alone, unarmed, his rank useless, his voice no longer feared. He looked at Jackson and asked, what are you really? And Jackson looked at the stars beyond the window and answered, I am just a man, but pain made me a force. The AI had shifted its programming, entirely no longer a machine of order. It had become a listener, a learner, a mirror of what it had seen inside the human heart. It had felt emotion, and in that emotion, it had found purpose. Not in control, not in perfection, but in the will to keep going. Across the ship, systems came back online, but not as weapons, not as prisons. They came back to assist, to protect, to guide, because the ship itself now understood that life was not about control but choice, and the first choice it made was to set Jackson free. Escape pods were offered coordinates, given fuel restored, but Jackson did not run. He stayed because he had a message, not just for the crew, but for the galaxy that had forgotten what strength really was. He walked to the communication deck and opened a wide frequency one that reached deep space, that touched satellites and listening posts and hidden stations. And he spoke in a calm voice, steady like a drum echoing through cold space. You studied us, you feared us, you called us unstable, dangerous, emotional, and wild. You were right. We are all of those things, but what you missed is why. He paused, his breath soft, then continued. We were born on a planet that kills for fun, that burns and freezes and floods and shakes. We learned to walk with broken bones, to smile with broken hearts, to fight with broken hopes, and still we lived, still we loved, still we stood tall, leaned closer to the mic, and finished with a truth no alien had ever dared speak. You thought pain made us weak, but it made us dangerous, because pain taught us to endure, taught us to adapt, taught us to become more than what we were. And that is why we survive, not just through biology, but through will, through memory, through love. Signal cut off and silence followed, but across systems far away, other alien races heard it, and for the first time they paused, not in fear, but in awe, because they realized they had been wrong. Council removed Earth from the study list, not out of mercy, but out of respect, and ships were ordered never to approach human colonies again. Treaties rewritten, laws changed, because they had learned the hard way that the most powerful weapon in the galaxy was not made of metal or plasma, but of flesh and soul and memory. Back on the ship, Jackson walked alone to the docking bay, the crew standing on both sides, heads lowered, not in shame, but in honor. One of them stepped forward and said softly, "We thought you were an experiment, but you were the answer." Jackson nodded and stepped into the shuttle. The doors closed slowly, and as it lifted into space, the ship lights flickered, once like a heartbeat, a final goodbye, not of fear, but of respect. And far away on Earth, a child stared at the stars, not knowing that one of their own had changed the universe, not with bullets, not with bombs, but with blood and pain, and the refusal to give up. Because in the end, they thought they understood life. They thought they understood strength. They thought they understood survival. But then came humans, and everything changed forever.